everyone. Good morning.
Hi,
Hi.
Pagi.
Yeah, so before I go into my session, I wanted to just invite Dr. C, DUS to maybe set the stage for today's webinar and let the participants know what to expect for today. And then we can move on into the main session.
Sure. Thanks, Julian, for this. So the reason we are here today is because Bu Amelia has invited us to speak to this alliance of journal editors to help you better understand what we look for when it comes to indexation in the Web of Science. So like Bu Ari has mentioned, this is an important thing in Indonesia, and we do work with Digbud now. Previously it was Ristek Dikti, and it became Breen, and it came out from Breen, and we know all of this journey of the higher education ministry in Indonesia. So I want to assure all of you in the event today that we are aware of the Sinta grading, and we are here to help you achieve the highest indexation status, which is Sinta 1, and being in the Web of Science would automatically qualify you for Sinta 1 as much as I understand. So for today, what we are going to do is really about sharing with you, firstly, what we look for. We as in Clarivate, what Clarivate looks for when we choose journals. And we would like to also clarify some of the questions you might have. And the second part would really be more of sharing with you the tips that we know would have worked elsewhere, because we cover Southeast Asia and Clarivate is a global company. We do have examples of successes that we can share with all of you on the call today. And if you have further questions, then Bu, Julian, and myself will be on the call to address them and to also discuss your concerns. So with this, I probably pass over to Bu, Julian.
Thank you. All right, so let's jump into the main session. So I'll start with the Web of Science journal selection process. What I like to do during my sessions is actually to be a bit more interactive because the whole journal selection process has many stages. And we want to take this opportunity to clarify as much questions as we can for the journal managers that are on the call. So if you do have any questions, I encourage you to put those questions into the chat box. I'm sure all of you know where the chat box is. Just type those questions in there, preferably in English. Then I can understand and I'll be able to address those questions as we go through the different stages. All right. From my understanding is that I think the aspiration for many of you here is to have your journal indexed into the Web of Science. And what I'll be sharing today is exactly how you can do that. So in case anyone is not too familiar with Web of Science, we are the most trusted publisher independent global citation database. And what makes us different is that we capture and index every single piece of metadata of a journal and index it into what we call the Web of Science core collection. And when we say every piece of information, what we refer to is actually the authors details, the full authors list. So even if it's 100 authors, we put in 100 authors in there, the abstract, the references, as well as the funding information that goes into the articles. This then allows the other users of Web of Science to be able to do very good analysis using the data from our database. The curation process, or the way that we select the content to be indexed into the Web of Science, is very standard. So we always use a standard set of criteria to evaluate the journals before they get indexed into the Web of Science. And this is done in-house by our team of expert editors. So this selection is not done externally. This is to make sure that we have prevented any form of bias in the selection process. So once the content has been selected to be indexed in Web of Science, it actually goes into the Web of Science platform. And the platform actually comprises of many other databases as well, which are things like the regional hosted collection. So we have the Arabic Citation Index, Chinese Citation Index, Russian Science, Korean, Cielo. These are all external citation indexes that we incorporated into the platform. When we say incorporate, it means that the selection process for these different citation databases is outside of our control. That means the individual citation indexes will be the ones who are doing the curation. Same thing goes for the specialty collections that we have, like zoological records, Biosis, FSTA, Medline, Inspect, and so on. So the whole Web of Science platform covers many different databases, many different indexes, but at the heart, this is where the Web of Science core collection content goes into. So for today, my focus will be on this little circle here, which comprises of the 4 journal indexes, which is the Emerging Sources Citation Index, Science, Social Science, and Arts and Humanities Citation Index. Okay. So what are these different indexes that we have in the Web of Science core collection? So I mentioned that the journal indexes are the 4. Okay, so SCIE, SSCI, AHCI, and ESCI. What are the differences between each of these indexes is I'll be explaining in a little while, but essentially those that are in ESCI, Emerging Sources Citation Index, are those that have met our quality criteria. Then for the SCIE, SSCI, and AHCI, these are specialized journals that have met our quality plus impact criteria. Okay. And also we have the books and the conference proceeding citation index, which are separate curation criteria. So let's start with the full how this evaluation process is done. So as I mentioned, it's conducted internally by our experts in-house. They are not affiliated to any publishers or research institutes, but they are experts in their own respective fields. Each editor will actually focus on a specific subject category because they are the deep knowledge experts in that publishing landscape. Then the journal data and information are collected by these respective editors independently because they will not entirely rely on the data provided by the publisher. So the curation is done fairly independently. If we are able to collect as much information as we can from the internet, from our respective sources, that is the information that the editors will be relying on. That's why later when I'm explaining some of the criteria, it's especially important that the information that you have about your journal is fully displayed and available clearly on your websites. Okay. We do not use algorithmic approaches or delegate any of the decisions to the research community. This is to prevent any bias in the selection of the journals. So in case that any of these external committees are part of any universities or journals, they might have a bias when it comes to selecting the journals to be indexed into the platform. The criteria that we use is the same set of criteria for all journals, no matter whether they are open access or not open access. We are always using the same set of 28 criteria. So this 28 criteria is made up of 24 quality criteria and 4 impact criteria. So this diagram here will explain the selection process. So if the journal meets our 24 quality criteria, they will be indexed in the Emerging Sources Citation Index. If they move on to meet our 4 impact criteria, they will be indexed into our specialized flagship collection, which is Science, Social Science, and Arts and Humanities Citation Index. So the Emerging Sources Citation Index essentially will cover all disciplines, whereas those that are in SCIE, SSCI, AHCI are dependent on the subject specializations. Okay. Now, if in the event, so the list is actually not stagnant. So we continuously monitor this list. If, let's say, the ESCI journals meet our 4 impact criteria, they will move into SCIE. Likewise, if over time, the criteria that are in for this journals here, they will be reevaluated. So if they subsequently do no longer meet some of these criteria, they could be removed from the list totally, or they could be moved into the ESCI again. Okay, so it's not stagnant. Now, these are the 28 selection criteria that we have. So the 24 that the first 24, which is the quality criteria, are here in the first 3 stages. So we have the light gray area here. These are the 24 quality criteria that we use to evaluate the journals. Okay. I'm getting some notification that my audio is not clear. Can you still hear me clearly?
Yes,
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay,
clearly.
Okay, good. All right. So the 4 impact criteria here will then make up the total of 28 criteria. If you look closely at each of these criteria here, you will notice that they look very simple. So things like making sure that your ISSN is there, your journal's title is there, clarity of the language, website functionality, all these seem very straightforward criteria. Okay, but there are certain things that we do look out for, which I will also address as I go deep diving into each of these criteria. So what will happen here is that at the first stage, at the initial triage, this is where you first submit your journal for evaluation into our portal. There is a stage called editorial triage, and these are the things that we will first look out for. Okay, then if you pass this stage, then you will move into the editorial evaluation. And then these would be the criteria that we use for the editorial evaluation. If you fail, if let's say you fail this first stage, there is no embargo. All right, so that means we will tell you what is missing, you correct it, you resubmit, and it continues in the evaluation. At the second stage, which is the editorial triage, on the first evaluation, okay, if you miss out anything, we will let you know. You can correct it and resubmit for evaluation. At that stage, there is no embargo. However, if at the second round, there are still things missing, then there is a potential embargo of 1 year. Okay, so just take note of that, yeah? If you pass this stage, you go into editorial evaluation. This is where we go very deep into the content, the citations, the authors, relevance, and so on. Okay, so this is when there will definitely be an embargo of 2 years if you fail at this stage. All right. Now the final stage here, which is the impact criteria, there is no need to resubmit for evaluation for impact. It is an automatic process which is triggered by the estimated journal impact factor that you would have. So if your journal meets maybe around a Q1 standard, okay, then there is a trigger to inform our editorial staff that it is time to reevaluate your journal, and they will evaluate on these 4 criteria. And if you meet these 4 criteria, you will then be indexed into the specialized flagship collections. Okay, I'm going to pause here to see whether there's any questions here. Okay. Dinah, I think you asked whether it's possible to get my PowerPoint. Yes, I will definitely share the PDF with Miss Amelia. Okay. All right, no questions, then we can move on to the deep dive. Okay, so let's start with the first stage, which is the initial triage. Fairly straightforward stage here. Number one, we will look for whether your journal is registered with an ISSN. So to make sure that you are registered with an ISSN first, and the portal, we will always use the portal.issn.org to check for your journal. Okay, so make sure that the portal, the registered information is consistent with your journal. So that means if your journal is named Journal of Business Management Indonesia, then when we look at the portal itself, we want to make sure that it's the same journal name and it's the ISSN that you have used in your website. Okay. Now wait, I pause here. There's a, oh, okay. I assume that is to invite you to put any questions into the chat. Okay. Yes. All right. So the next part is the next one criteria is journal title. Make sure it's consistent, like I mentioned. Journal publisher, make sure that you include your address on your website, and when you register, make sure that the address is consistent and same as what we would see on, let's say, your journal's website. Okay. URL, if your journal is an online journal, make sure that the website is unique and a valid website where all the published content of the journal is archived. So that means if you have any past issues, make sure it's there. If it's open access, we will try to also access some of these issues. Okay. If your content is not open access, that means there's a login required. Our editorial team would request for a login and password so that they are able to look into your content and do the evaluation. Okay. Then presence of peer review policy. Okay, so we want to make sure that you declare the peer review policy that you're using. So is it single blind, double blind, open peer review? This information has to be disclosed and visible on your website. The importance of this is because when authors are submitting their papers into your journal, one of the things that they would probably look out for to make sure that they are submitting to a proper journal is peer review, because all scientific research content should be peer reviewed before they are published. Yeah. Contact details, so making sure that there is a proper contact details that we can reach out to in case our editors have any questions relating to some of the content on your websites or about your journal. So if you fulfill all these criteria at this stage, congratulations, you will then move on to the next stage. If you do not meet one or two of these criteria, you will be invited to correct them and then resubmit with no embargo. Now, there is a question here. What if we put abbreviation on our journal website beside the journal's name that is not listed in the portal? Is it possible? Yes, that's fine. So as long as the full journal's name is there and it is purely an abbreviation at the end, that's fine. What we are looking for is, for example, if you're Journal of Business Management Indonesia, and then on the portal it says Journal of Veterinary Science Indonesia. Okay, so very obvious differences that we are looking for. All right. Okay, how can Clarivate know the depth of evidence of peer review? That's a very good question, Buari. So that will come at the editorial evaluation stage. So if you take a look at the chart here, there's a third column where there's a peer review there. So, oops, let me see. Okay, so in terms of the in terms of the depth of peer review, the evidence, I'll explain later on how we collect that. But one example is, for example, journals now, when they publish an article, they usually put in the date of submission of the article, date of correction, date of final decision. So all these different dates usually get displayed on the articles now. So that serves as one of the examples of evidence that we look at to make sure that there's a peer review process in place. The other example is that if there's a lot of journal that is doing open peer review, sometimes they will also put in the peer review information. That means the comments and so on their together with the article. Okay. Okay. Now to the next stage. This is the editorial triage stage, and what we are looking for is, number one, the scholarly content, to make sure that these are original research papers, reviews, case studies, relevant research content, scholarly content. And the article titles and the article's abstract should be in English, because at the end of the day, if you want to be indexed in an international database like Web of Science, your readers are the international audience. So not all of them will understand Bahasa. So you definitely need to make sure that your articles and your abstract is in English so that they know what is the science that they are reading. Okay. So this is one example that I have in Korea. So even though they have their Korean title, it's a Korean journal, okay, they make sure that the title is translated into English and also the abstract translated into English. Yeah. The bibliographic information, which is things like the references, reference lists, should be in Roman script. So this bibliographic information, the references, can be in Bahasa, but they have to be in the Roman characters. Yeah. Clarity of language, so it has to be readable and comprehensible content. I think this also translates to writing an article. Many researchers think that using a lot of very complicated words or complicated sentences will be better, but not necessarily, because you want to make sure that you're delivering the clarity in the science rather than confusing your readers. So make sure that the language that you use is straightforward, simple, readable, and comprehensible. Okay. Timeliness and publication volume. Now, this is one of the important criteria that we are also looking for. It has to conform to the stated publication schedule, and annual volume agrees with subject area. So what does this mean? Now, if you state that you publish 4 issues a year, we are looking to see that 4 issues a year. Yeah, so that means in 1 year, we don't want to see 3, 1 year 2, 1 year 4. We want to see consistency. The other thing is, when we look at your publication months, okay, we want to see consistency in your publication months as well. So if it's 4 issues, usually you do it in January, April, June or July, and then November, December time, right? So we will always, if you declare that you will publish 1 issue in January, 1 issue in June, 1 issue in December, we will always look at those months to make sure that you have published during those months. All right. If you declare that you publish in June, but you only publish in August, then that is a sign that there is a delay. It tells us that potentially maybe you do not have enough manuscripts to sustain the number of issues that you declare that you want to publish, or you might not be able to cope in terms of the review of your articles that are coming in. So timeliness is very important. When we do our evaluation, when our editors do the evaluation, they will look at least 3 to 4 issues backwards and forwards. Okay. Then the other one is the publication volume. I think a lot like journal managers will ask, how many articles do we need minimally? There is no set number, but we will look at different specializations. So in Web of Science, we have many journals. You are able to look at those journals and see their relevant number of articles in a year. Okay, so you use that as a benchmark for the number of articles that you would potentially need. But we do evaluate journals, which are around 12 to 15 or 16 articles a year. That is possible as well. Okay. Website functionality and journal format. This is quite straightforward. It will need to include the proper website, make sure that it's functioning properly, make sure all the buttons are clickable, the links are correct links, and also is clearly displayed. Okay. This one is the presence of ethics statement. So if the declaration of conflicts of interest should be there. If you are a medical journal, then we want to know what's your stand on research with animals and humans, for example, and the disclosure of the patient information, the privacy policies around that. Okay, so we want to make sure that all the ethics related statements are there on your website. The editorial affiliation details should also be clearly there, meaning that your editorial board members, where are they from, and also their country and city if possible. If you are able to link to a profile of theirs, even better. Otherwise, our editors will be the ones who are checking to make sure that those editorial board members are indeed from those institutions that you have listed. Okay. And finally, same thing goes for the author affiliations. So we want to check that the authors are in the articles are from those various countries or cities or institutions that they say they are from. Okay. So at this stage, if you have anything that is missing, our editors will inform you to correct, and you will be invited to resubmit for evaluation again without an embargo. However, upon the second time, if let's say there's again more information that is missing, then there could be an embargo of 1 year. Okay, but the first instance, there will be no embargo. Okay, I'm going to pause here. Any questions? Let me see. No.
Any question? Apakah ada pertanyaan, Bapak Ibu? Silakan bisa disampaikan. Yeah, I think there's not yet.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm Jumael from
Hi.
Journal,
Hi, Pak
Universitas Muhammadiyah Jakarta. I want to asking you about the website functionality. Actually, is website functionality, is there any minimum or standard that determined by WOS to get indexed in WOS?
For website functionality, there is no minimum set criteria. When we say website functionality, we want to make sure that number one, there's a clear area that authors can click on to say that they want to submit an article to you. There is clear links to things like your ethics statements, links to your previous issues, links to your editorial board members' information, making sure that the website is functioning properly. So because when the authors are looking for information, that is usually the first thing that they will look for. So if let's say they click on submit button, but it doesn't work, it's also not good for you, because the authors themselves will feel frustrated because they cannot submit. So we want to make sure that everything is working properly, and yeah.
Okay. One more maybe. Baskara Journal has an history article publication that indexed by Baskara has the has in Bahasa, but at last 4 years we completely use full English. So is that become a restriction because we have the history publication in Bahasa? Is that possible to index?
Yeah, that's fine. So historical information in Bahasa is fine, but it would be good if you can at least translate the articles and the abstracts in the more recent issues into English. Okay,
for the previous article.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be everything, but at least for maybe next the last 2 issues, maybe if it's in Bahasa, you make sure that some of the articles and all that are translated into English. Number one, because if let's say you get selected to be indexed in ESCI, that still has to be done because we will still look at historical information to index as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Lin.
Okay, any other questions? Nope. Okay, then let's go on. I see that Dr. C is helping to address some of the questions. So do you think if there's any questions that have not been addressed by you, let me know, yeah? Okay, then if you do meet all these different the criteria here, then it will move into the editorial evaluation. And this is where it gets very serious. Okay, our editorial team will actually go in and deep dive into your published content. Yeah. So what are they looking for? Number one, the editorial board composition. In terms of the number of members, the geographic diversity, that means which countries they're from, whether they have published themselves and whether they have citations as well. Those will be what we are looking for. Now, I know some of you will have questions like, how many members can I have in my editorial board? Now, there's no set number, but in the event, we will also look at the aims and scopes of your journal. So if your aims and scopes say that you are a regional focused journal, that means you only do the APAC region, yeah, then the composition we are looking for is that you at least have editorial board members across these different APAC countries. If you say you are international, then we are looking to make sure that you at least have a few editorial members across the different continents around the world. Okay, and the number of members, there is no set number, but we are not looking to see 100 editorial board members inside. We want to make sure that it is comparable to your size of your journal. So that means if let's say you only publish maybe 15 articles a year, but you have 100 editorial board members, then it doesn't seem very balanced. Okay, so we want to make sure that at least when you have your editorial board members in there, they are helping you to get content for your journal. Validity of statements. So in the previous stage, we looked for the presence of ethics statements. So that means if you declare that you will definitely not disclose the information about the patient and so on, then we are looking for evidence of this statement being applied. So what is this evidence? So let's say you will definitely ask the authors themselves to declare maybe in a form like declaration of anonymity of the patient and so on. So that means there's a certain form that you have put in place so that it makes sure that you have addressed those ethics statements. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Okay, so if you declare that you do not what else is there? Privacy policy. So let's say, for example, you will not disclose the data of certain individuals in your research, okay, in your journal. Then there might be a form or a questionnaire that you make sure that the authors themselves agree, and then that is an evidence. Okay. Peer review. Now, this is where we look for evidence of adequate peer review. So this is what we mentioned earlier on, where nowadays a lot of articles will put in the date of review. So received on a specific date. So this is one example, received on 3rd June 2020, revised on 13 July 2020, accepted on 27 July 2020, and then published in 25th September 2020. Okay, so these dates here will then give us some kind of evidence that it has gone through some revision process and before being accepted and published. Okay. Now, Ari, you asked, do we need specific template of ethical statement? Not necessarily so. Okay, so the evidence will be based off, number one, the ethics statement that you declared, and then also the your own forms or questionnaires that you have put in place in your journal. Okay, so you just have to make sure that there are certain journals already that have the ethics statements on their website. You can always refer to those journals and have a look, see and do a reference, but don't copy wholesale. Okay, make sure that it applies to you as your own journal. Okay, it can be one statement, two statement. It doesn't have to be every single statement that other journals might have. Okay. Is it not enough to declare that the journal follows scope? Yes, you can. So if you declare that the journal follows scope, that is one of your ethics statement. So that's fine. Yeah. Then content relevance. Okay, so content relevance is looking at published content, whether it is consistent with the title and stated scope of your journal. We will look at your aims and scopes and see whether it matches what you have actually published. So we are looking for one very obvious example is business management journal publishing veterinary science. It doesn't match, right? so that is one obvious difference. Yeah. But of course, that is just a very simple illustration. What our experts will actually do is to see whether what you mentioned in your aims, your scope, is really true to what has been published. Okay. Grant support details. Now, this is not mandatory, but encouraged. Reason is because if the grant information is included, it will also be indexed into Web of Science if your journal gets selected, because the researchers and the administrators around the world in various institutions, they always like to look at what grants have been supporting certain areas of research. So if you're able to provide this information, it will be very useful for the research community. So this is an example of what we mean by grant support details. It might not be the amount. It doesn't have to be the amount of grant that you received. It's just some kind of acknowledgement. So funding acknowledgement and other acknowledgements. Okay. Adherence to community standards. So this is things like your formats and conventions used by international community of researchers. So this is fairly field specific or specialization specific, where if there's a certain standard that has been used to do certain measurements and stuff like that, then those measurements have to be consistent. If, let's say, for certain specializations, there's a certain way of writing a certain research paper, then the formats have to be followed as well. things like the referencing format, those also will be looked into. Okay. Author distribution. Okay, this is where we will look at the diversity of your authors, where they're from. Again, it has to be aligned with your aims and scopes. So if you are international, we are looking for a lot of international contributions. If you are regional, we are looking for regional contributions. Okay. Same thing for the publications and citations that are in line with the content and scope, like what I mentioned before. Appropriate citation to literature. This is where we go also a little deeper. When we look at the articles that you have published before, if under the references used, we will check that the references are relevant. So meaning that if we suddenly see some non-relevant reference, it's kind of like a red flag to our editorial team in terms of whether it is an appropriate citation or not. Or is it there for the sake of citing that particular paper? All this would be checked by our experts. So if you do not meet some of these criteria, we will let you know, but there will be an embargo of 2 years before you can resubmit. The reason is because many of these criteria here may require some time to correct. Okay, so it may not be an instantaneous change that you can do. So we do have a 2-year embargo before you can resubmit again. Okay, but if you do meet those criteria, then congratulations, you have met all the quality criteria, and you will then be indexed into ESCI. Okay. Riza, you have a question. How many geographic diversity at least we should provide on editorial board? So it depends on your scope in your journal. So if you declare that you are international, then we are looking for an international pool of editorial board members, or at least advisory board members. So now that there are 2 different ones, right? Advisory board members and editorial board members and advisory board members. We look at them together. Okay, so you could have advisors from international geographic zones. Your main editorial board might be local. Okay, that's also fine. But we would look at it as a whole to make sure that you do have advisors from other countries relevant to your scope. Okay, I see a hand raised. Jajang?
Yeah. I have
Hello.
Hello.
Yep. What's your question?
Okay. Okay. I have questions, but actually my question is same with Mr. Reja's questions. I want to ask you about the geographic diversity. So is it mandatory? And then how many editors that has to come from another countries? That you have explained it. Okay.
Yeah. So I just mentioned the diversity. So if let's say you're regional, then we are looking at least maybe the Southeast Asia countries that you have some list of advisory board members that would be able to advise you. And it's we also want to see that if you are international, then we want to make sure that you also have international advisors on your team as well. Yeah.
So is it mandatory or not mandatory?
Yes. It will be I would say mandatory, but there is no set number. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So that's the quality criteria. The last part is this is the part where it gets automatically evaluated if you meet an estimated GIF journal impact factor. Okay, so if you meet like a Q1, Q2 standard in your specialization, there will be a trigger, and the editors will start evaluating your journal again. And the evaluation will start from the beginning, meaning that we will re-evaluate you from quality criteria onwards, all the way to impact criteria. Okay, so if you meet everything, then you will be in the flagship specialized collection. So at this stage, it becomes a bit more around citation activity, where we are looking at comparative citation analysis. So comparing your journal with those similar journals that are already indexed in the flagship collections. Okay, so we have many different subject categories, 254 actually. So once you go into ESCI, you will be given a subject category in Web of Science. Using that subject category, you can see the list of journals that are your peers, okay? And from there, you can then benchmark yourself against them. And that's what we do. We will look at your citation performance in comparison to those journals. We will also do author citation analysis. So we will look at your authors to see their publication history, their appropriate citation network. So who is citing them? Are they mostly cited by their own individual universities, or are they cited by regional? Okay, this would be a sign of checking whether there's influence in the research that you're publishing. Okay. For editorial board members, we are also looking at the citation analysis in the same way, where we are looking at their publication history, whether their what is their citation network, who is citing them, to make sure that they are of as relevant influence for the specialized collections. Then last one is content significance. So the content should be of interest, importance, and value. This may be evidenced as a unique specialization, novel perspective, regional focus, unusual content, or content that enriches the Web of Science coverage. So what our editors are really looking for is to see what's different that your journal can provide to the Web of Science community. Because if the Web of Science already has 101 journals in the same field as you, with similar aims and scopes as you, what unique content or perspective are you bringing to the table? Yeah, so that is an important question that all of you should be asking yourself to find out whether the content that you're publishing will help to advance science or research in that particular arena that is potentially already very saturated. Okay, so that's what we are looking for when we are looking at the content significance. And that's it. So if you meet the 4 impact criteria, you will then be indexed into the specialized flagship collections depending on your journal's subject category. Okay. If you do not, you will not be kicked off. You will just remain in ESCI. Okay. Now, how do the collections move around? I already mentioned that the list might not be stagnant. So the list could change, but it doesn't change all the time. Okay, otherwise there's no stability. But there are changes, there could be changes. So that means like ESCI journals moving into the flagship moving back into ESCI. So for re-evaluations are prioritized for journals that display high citation performance. So it'll be triggered. Then the ESCI journals will be evaluated. And we will monitor the citation performance of all journals indexed in ESCI and perform a re-evaluation when indicators show that the impact criteria may be met. The re-evaluation process will start at the editorial triage stage. That means they will be re-evaluated for quality first, then impact evaluation is subject to the quality criteria being met first. So that means once you're indexed in ESCI, make sure that you maintain all the quality criteria, okay, so that you are not dropped in case that you are being evaluated for impact as well. And we will continuously monitor the index journals for quality. So if you do no longer meet some of the quality criteria, we get feedback from the ground, that means the researchers themselves, then you could be removed from the list entirely. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. That's the whole criteria explained. Those are the details around how we select our journals. I hope that has given you some clarity. But if not, you can always refer to our essay here, which is there's a link here to our editorial selection process. You can scan the QR code or click the link when you receive the slide deck. This would give you all the details that I've just presented in terms of the selection criteria. Okay, are there any questions in the chat that I should be addressing? Let me see. Okay. If we want to index an annual conference proceeding in Clarivate, would it undergo the same process? There will be a slightly different criteria. So if you go to this page that I'm showing you, this is the journal selection page. There is a link from that page to the conference proceedings as well. So for annual conference proceedings, it would usually go to CPCI, Conference Proceeding Citation Index. So the evaluation criteria are similar, but not entirely the same. Yeah, you can refer to that in the link. Alternatively, I will try and send you a link to a previous recording that we have done that explain the full CPCI evaluation process. Okay. What if our institution is not yet on the list of Web of Science? Can we register for selection or not? When you say institution, what do you mean? So your journal or your university? Amelia?
I mean the university.
Our
Our publisher is the university itself.
So you're
Yeah.
saying that it's not in Web of Science?
Yes.
So that means the institution has not published any paper, or?
Oh, is the institution automatically in the list of the Clarivate? Because I tried to register in, I don't know, it may be the Web of Science. Our institution is not yet there.
If you can share which website you were looking to register. Is it the publisher portal?
On accessclarivate, accessclarivate.com.
Accessclarivate.com. You mean so Bu Amelia, which is your institution?
State Polytechnic of Malang.
So that means are you trying to access Web of Science itself?
Yes.
So access to Web of Science itself is a subscription. It's a subscription process. So that means your institution has to subscribe to Web of Science in order to see Web of Science database. So I think for your institution, you're currently not subscribing to Web of Science. That's why you can't access it. But you can go to you can still use the Web of Science to find your researchers. So there is still a researcher search functionality if you register for Web of Science free account.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, I think the other thing that Bu and Media was asking is whether they can still submit their journal for evaluation, and the answer is yes. So you can still submit regardless of whether you have access to the Web of Science or not. So yes, you can still submit.
Okay.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah. So if you go to this publisher portal, so this is the link to the publisher portal. This is where you can submit your journal. Okay, so you have to register for your publisher portal account. So just go there, register for it, and then you can submit your journals. Usually what we do is, if let's say you are an institution that has multiple journals, we try to get the department that does the journal management to create this account and submit on the behalf of individual journals. Okay. How it looks like, I have a few screen captures here. So once you have registered, you will be able to monitor the progress of your evaluation. So that means once you've submitted, there will be a status there, whether it's under evaluation, pending, accepted, or rejected. Under evaluation means that it is, like I said, under evaluation. But if it's pending, it means that it is still in the queue. So that means because our editorial team actually receives a few hundred requests for evaluations maybe in a month. So the queue can be quite long. Sometimes we hear editors asking, oh, I submitted in November last year. How come until now I still don't hear anything? Rest assured, it's still in the system, but because there is a queue, it takes a while to get to your journal. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for showing this, Julin. This relates to Bu Ari's point earlier on in the chat that she wants to know what has happened to the journal. And I mentioned that there is a publisher portal, and this is like this is the one. And Barijaya University has access like this. I know for sure because we have met many journal editors from Barijaya University. So the university definitely has an account like this that is shown on the screen, and Bu Ari, you can have access to that to see where your journal is.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. C.
So when you're in the portal, you click on submit a journal, then this is what it will look like. If you remember, our criteria is actually the first stage, right? So all this will be there. Things like ISSN check, language, journal details, access information, which is your website. All these details will be there before you can move on to the next step. Okay. So in the slide, I'll provide various links here, but it is essentially the selection process for the journal, the publisher portal, and also something that we have, which is the Web of Science Academy. This is something that maybe you might want to share with your existing pool of peer reviewers, because on the Web of Science Academy, there is online courses available for peer reviewers. So it will teach your peer reviewers how to properly review a research article. For institutions, it can also be a way to upgrade the skills of your existing researchers in terms of their peer review skills. Because when they understand how to do a peer review, they know what peer reviewers are looking for, and therefore they potentially could write better papers. Yeah. I wanted to also take this opportunity to announce something where we are making some changes to the Web of Science core collection. So currently, only the journals in SCIE and SSCI have a journal impact factor. Yeah. So currently, only SSCI and SCIE journals have a journal impact factor. Moving forward, from this year onwards, June, the upcoming journal citation reports, the journal impact factor will be provided to all journals. That means AHCI journals and ESCI journals as well. So if your journal gets included, that means if your journal passes the evaluation for quality, you get indexed in ESCI, you will be provided with a journal impact factor. Okay. So what this would then mean is in our latest journal citation report, which is actually the home of the journal impact factor, we will include almost 9,000 journals with GIF, and we also have increase the number of Go Open Access journals that will have a journal impact factor. Hey, so that's all I had to share for the criteria. Any other questions before we move into improving journal, improving the journal quality?
Yes, this is from Baskara Journal.
Hi,
Just to confirm,
Mm.
how long the duration take time for the indexed by the Clarivate after the registration, actually.
Okay, so there's a few things. Once you submit your journal to be evaluated, you will join the queue. How long is that queue? I cannot guarantee. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be 1 year, depending on the subject specialization. So let's say if your journal is a very popular, highly productive specialization, then the queue might be very long. Whereas if you are in a very niche area, like maybe, how to say, nanoparticles, then maybe the queue will be a bit shorter. So it really depends on the specialization. I cannot say for sure how long you will have to wait before you get evaluated. But once you are starting the evaluation, it might take 6 months to a year, because we will always look at the issues that you are publishing. We will look at previous issues plus also upcoming maybe 1 or 2 issues. So depending on your publication frequency, that might be how long it might take. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Pak Jumal?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe one more question about the minimum pages for each volume publication. Is that any criteria, how much page and how much article in one publication?
Yes. So number of pages, there's no set rule. Okay, but we are looking for consistency in number of articles. So let's say if you publish 4 issues a year, we want to see almost the same number of articles in each issue. So that means if you do 10 in one issue, make sure that you have about 10 in subsequent ones. The reason is because if, let's say, in one issue you have 10, subsequent issue, maybe suddenly, oh, I got so many articles that come in, I'm very happy, I'll publish everything. You put 50. Then the following issue, you put 10 because you already exhausted all your manuscripts. It shows some kind of inconsistency in the pipeline of manuscripts that you are receiving. So that is something that I want all of you all to take note of. Make sure that there is consistency in the number of articles that you publish. Consistency is also key when it comes to attracting the authors themselves, because authors would also look at the potential of their publication being in your journal. So let's say you have inconsistent number of articles in each issue. It's very hard for the authors themselves to know, if I put my articles in here, what is the chances of being published in this issue or next issue? It's not very clear, because sometimes you publish a lot, sometimes you publish very little. So it doesn't, there's no stability. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Pak Jumal?
Okay, so in each number of issues, we have to state the issues in the cover. Is it to make it consistent? Because honestly, in our journal, we did not declare the issue in the cover for its number of publication, actually. So yeah, so to evaluate the consistency, is that the issues has to be declared in cover or not?
Yes. So usually most proper journals or the journals that we are evaluating will have the volume and issue numbers all on the cover page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Yes, anything that I missed in the chat?
No?
Okay,
Looks
then
good.
we will move on to the journal improvement. So this next segment is very much about some of the tips that I wanted to share with you on how you can improve the quality of your standard, so that of your journal, so that you can meet the quality criteria that we have in our selection process. And I think at the beginning, when Bu Ari had her speech, her keynote speech, she mentioned that the job of a journal manager is a lot more than what is your actual full-time job. Yeah, and it is indeed true, because it is a never-ending process of trying to make sure that you achieve the quality of your journal to be indexed, and then subsequently to maintain that quality of your journal. So it is a journey, and I hope that we will be able to partner with all of you in your journey to improve in your journal management. Now, I wanted to share some of the common attributes of a successful journal. Actually, there's only maybe two. Two of the most important criteria or attributes of a good journal. Number one, they have very good content, new content, novel breakthrough knowledge that they are sharing to the research community. They also have a very good network size. What is this network? Network of editors, network of peer reviewers, network of authors, and network of readers. And these two attributes actually work hand in hand. So for journals at the very beginning, especially new journals, small journals, they struggle with establishing these attributes, because without a good network, they cannot have good content. Without good content, they also cannot have a good network, right? So it's a constant struggle, but it's step by step. It is important to pay attention to these two attributes as part of your goal to achieve quality, because if you are able to have a good network of, say, peer reviewers, that means currently maybe you want to improve your peer review size. Your peer reviewers are your potential authors as well. So if you are able to maintain that relationship with your peer reviewers, they could potentially contribute as authors to your journal. They will have their own network as well, because they will have their own students and their own juniors or friends or colleagues, and they can share about your journal. So that's how you can try and start to establish that network. Once you consistently improve on your network slice slowly, your content will also improve subsequently. It's a snowball effect. Yeah. So this journal improvement roadmap that I want to share with you is just three things. Assess where you are now, identify the gaps, and implement a plan. So use tools to help you to assess your current standing. Take a look at how is your journal doing. So I've already shared with you the full criteria for Web of Science selection. Okay, use that criteria, that table, as a way to assess where you are and where are your gaps. Compare and benchmark yourself against peers. So if you know which subject area or subject specialization your journal is in, you can go into the Web of Science or the journal citation reports, or even our free website, which is the master journal list. I think Liu-Sing, if you can put in that link, it'll be great. The master journal list can be where you can start to identify who are your peers, which journals you're competing with within Web of Science, and see how are they doing. Look at their website. Take a look at the articles that they've published. What's the difference between them and you, right? And then formulate a strategy to close those gaps. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you here is, how is your journal's publication output level and publishing timeliness? So this is specific to this criteria, which is timeliness and publication volume. You need to make sure that you're consistent, as what I've mentioned earlier on. Make sure that your schedules are consistent, number of articles are consistent, and it is very important because it shows the pipeline. It also shows the trustworthiness of your journal. The gap that you might want to be concerned about is this. Okay, if you are already using a manuscript management tool, okay, is your manuscript management tool doing its job? Is it helping you? Okay, we've got two statements here that we got from some other journal editors as well as authors. The first one is from a journal editor. He said that he used a free system, a free journal management system, and it wasn't maintained very well. It broke down. So authors themselves were not able to submit the manuscript for almost 1 month. So for the journal editor, manuscripts are gold, right? It's your pipeline. So if you've lost that potential amount of manuscripts, that is quite worrying. Okay, but from the perspective of an author, which is the second statement, if I'm unable to access the page to submit my manuscript, will I come back to that journal again? If I try 1 time, maybe I'll give another chance. Maybe it's the internet. I'll come back again. 2 times, 3 times, still cannot. It frustrates me as an author. Then where do I go? I go to another journal, because if I'm a postgraduate student, time is of the essence. I cannot afford to wait. Yeah. So make sure that your manuscript management workflow is smooth and your websites are working very well, so that you have a healthy line of manuscripts coming in, and you will then be consistent in your issue publications as well as your number of articles per issue. So once you identify the gap, if you realize that, hey, I need to improve on my manuscript management workflow and my system, then look for a plan. Identify a tool that can help address this. And Scholar One manuscripts is an example. So at Clarivate, we actually have this manuscript management system that is used by a lot of international publishers, and it's called Scholar One Manuscript. It allows you to manage the whole workflow of the article, from submission all the way to pre-production. So what this means is that you're able to make sure that, number one, when your authors are submitting their manuscript to you, you already dictate what are the compulsory things that they need to submit. If you dictate that these are all the compulsory fields, then it reduces the amount of time you will spend in trying to communicate with the authors to say, hey, can you give me this information? Can you give me that information? It improves your efficiency. Okay. And at the same time, in this system, you're able to track the stages of your manuscript. So how many of them are stuck at certain stages? And when you're able to see where are the bottlenecks of this process, you will also be able to address those issues. So let's say, for example, once you are going through the submission process and you do the manuscript check, then you see a lot of manuscripts stuck at the peer review stage. Then you know, oh, I don't have enough peer reviewers. I need to find more peer reviewers. So then you will know what to address so that it will continue the efficient flow of the manuscript in the pipeline. Okay. So this system also has full reporting functionalities, as well as email templates that you can use to schedule reminders for your peer reviewers, schedule reminders for your associate editors, so that you can improve the efficiency of your management. This is a typical Scholar One manuscript workflow. So there's a submission process. So there's a form that you will customize. So it's customized workflow for you, customized workflow for the authors, and customized workflow for the reviewers as well. So there's always an administrator who can check and assign the manuscript to the relevant people, and you will be able to control the manuscript at every single stage. How you can build a site is fairly simple. So for Scholar One manuscript, we are hosted on Amazon Web Services. So it is 99.99% uptime. So meaning that there is usually no downtime for your authors or your reviewers. Okay, there is always support available for you 24/5. So 5 working days a week, 24 hours a day. And at the first stage, when you're implementing, you will be assigned an implementation project manager who will work with you on your requirements, your workflow, and build the site. Once the site has been built, there will be training given to your editors and your administrators before it is launched for use by your reviewers and your authors. Okay. So by implementing this, it will save you time in your workflow, making it more efficient to sustain a healthy pipeline of articles. So far, these are the screen grabs that I have that I wanted to share with you as samples. So this is an example of the submission form. So on Scholar One, you are able to define the different steps for submission for your authors. Anything that is a compulsory field, you can dictate. And you can also be very specific. So if there's a limit to the number of words that you want for your journal, then for your article, then do indicate it there, like the number of number of characters for the title. Okay. And what this will then do is that if, let's say, the author did not submit anything, they cannot move forward. So there will be prompts on the screen to say that, hey, you're missing certain content, and there will be direct links to the problem or missing information. Okay. And when they have filled out everything, then they can submit. And this is how the administrator will look at the system. So you can see that there are different stages here: checklist, associate editor assignment, reviewer selection, invitation, score, and decision. So this would then show you how many manuscripts there are at each stage, and you can then track what has happened to these 10 manuscripts that are awaiting reviewer invitation. That means you do not have enough reviewers, or none of the reviewers have accepted. Yeah. We also have fraud detection tools available on the Scholar One system. Okay, so the fraud detection that we have is something that many journal editors have feedback that is a good thing, because nowadays there's there's a lot of focus on predatory publishing, unethical publishing. There's even fake authors and fake reviewers. So within Scholar One, we have a fraud detection tool available to detect any of these. So an example here is non-institutional email. So that means it was a Gmail or Hotmail. Then it will prompt you and say, hey, this is medium risk. You might want to check whether this individual is really from that particular institution that he or she declared. Then author suggested reviewer. There could be alerts as well to say that, hey, this reviewer was suggested by the author. You might want to pay a closer attention. In terms of the share same network, okay, or share same computer, this is a sign that says, hey, the author has submitted the article from this same IP address or same computer with the peer reviewer. Are they the same person? Okay, so all these can be detected from the system itself. And of course, it can be turned on or off depending on what you require. There are also other benefits here to the Scholar One system. There is automated reminders, so you can set reminders for your peer reviewers to get the reviews done. There's an audit trail, there's reporting tools available, so you can see your acceptance rate, rejection rate, your overall manuscript processing time, your reviewer or editor's workload. You can also have templates that are already there, so you don't have to redo any templates at all. And there's an integration with a plagiarism detection tool called Authenticate that you can do. And there is also an integration with the Web of Science Reviewer Locator, which I can share with you in a while. Okay. So this is one of the journals that has already implemented. So they used to be using an open source system, but he felt that it was very taxing to manage the papers. So once they have moved to the Scholar One manuscript system, they found it very easy because it helps to streamline and reduce the amount of work required to review and publish the papers. They are also able to reach out to higher quality reviewers because of the integration with the Web of Science Reviewer Locator. And overall, they managed to assure that the authors of the quality and reliability of the journal. Yeah. Because the system itself is used by many high journal impact affected journals and other publishers. So the system is familiar it's a system that many authors are already familiar with. Then this is our long-standing client, University Putra Malaysia. They have been using the Scholar One system for a very long time. They have always been using this with us, even before they were in Web of Science. So through that, they actually journeyed from having no indexation in Web of Science to ESCI to also the SCIE. So that's one example, making sure that you improve on your manuscript workflow. So assessing your manuscript timeliness, productivity levels, that is one example. The other example that I wanted to share with you is to assess your reviewers. So who are your peer reviewers? Are you meeting the standards for peer reviewing? Okay, so this will address two of the quality criteria, which is presence of peer review policy and evidence of the peer review policy. So you want to make sure that if you do not have enough peer reviewers, so earlier on I showed you in the Scholar One manuscript system, if you have a bottleneck at the peer reviewing stage, then that is the gap that you want to fill. Making sure that you have more peer reviewers that you can that can help you review your articles, and you will then want to make sure that they are happy and agree to review for you. So we have a peer reviewer engagement that we have on Web of Science, and it is two parts. One is helping you to identify the peer reviewer. The second part is to make sure that your peer reviewers are happy. So for the first part, I'm going to share with you is the reviewer locator. So how can you find more qualified reviewers for your journal? It is a system which immediately pulls out maybe about close to 100 suggested reviewers based on the article that you want to find a peer reviewer for. The system will also identify conflicts of interest and red flags so that you are able to identify which are those that might have bias. This will then increase your accepted invitations rate because you will be using the most up-to-date information to contact the reviewers. So these are reviewers that have already been, that are publishing maybe in the last 3 years to 5 years. Okay. And it will also help to increase your diversity of your peer reviewer pool. Okay. I know all of you are probably very reliant on maybe a set of peer reviewers for your journal. So you always send your articles to only these maybe 10, 20 different peer reviewers to ask them to peer review. Am I right? Potentially, right? You might exhaust them. So you want to make sure that you are able to expand on your pool so that you don't tire out your existing pool of reviewers. You also have more international reviewers who would then also potentially be your international authors. Okay, so you have to think of that way. Peer reviewers are always your first step to your potential contributors in the future. Yeah. So how does the system work? We will take the paper and we will search through the Web of Science core collection. We will match them based on publication years, publications in the past 3 to 5 years. We will also match them according to author affiliations, countries, keywords, potential organization and co-author conflicts will also be reviewed. We will then also link this with our previously known Publon's profile, where they are able to put in their peer review work that they have done so that you can see whether they are good peer reviewers or not. So you're able to also see their peer review records. So the system will recommend up to 100 reviewers for you to choose from. And this system can be integrated to Scholar One. Okay. This will then save you time to identify the most qualified reviewers because you can see both their publication history and review history, peer review history, all in one. And this is an example of the conflicts of interest flag. So once a reviewer is recommended, you will see where they are from. There will be a link to the to contact them, and there's also a section that would tell you there's potential conflicts of interest because of the affiliation to the author. Okay, you will also be able to see the latest publications and related keywords for his research so that you're able to see whether it is a good fit for the article that you want to review. If you do not have the Scholar One system but you have some other other editorial management system now, we can explore a standalone subscription to Web of Science Reviewer Locator. So the Web of Science Reviewer Locator is also available as a website. So you can go to this website and search for reviewers. So all you need to do is put in the journal title, that means your journal's name, the title of the article, and the abstract of the article, and the system will generate the suggested reviewers. The system also allows you to limit to certain countries or exclude certain countries from the search, and also exclude certain reviewers. Okay. So this particular Journal of Sustainability, Science and Management, they started using Reviewer Locator a few years ago. It saved them quite a substantial amount of time, they reduced it to 1/3 of what they used to spend on. Okay, they are also able to easily make sure that they are not inviting predatory reviewers. That means these reviewers are actually publishing their own papers that is on Web of Science. They are trusted, and therefore he avoided the chances of reaching out to potential predatory peer reviewers. Okay, so that was the first part of peer review selection. So if you want to expand on your peer review pool, you can use Web of Science Reviewer Locator. The next thing is to make sure that you motivate them to continue to submit their review. Okay, so the demand for peer review is increasing, but the reviewers are also being less responsive. Do you realize that now it takes you more effort to get a reviewer to say yes to review for your article? The reason is because there are more and more journals out there. There are more and more articles to be reviewed, and therefore they themselves also get more and more invitations. So we have this thing called the Web of Science Reviewer Recognition Service, which allows you to recognize your peer reviewers automatically if they have a Web of Science researcher profile. Okay, so I think for SINTA, all researchers have to claim their Web of Science researcher ID. Yeah, that means they have to create a researcher ID from themselves. That is what we call the researcher profile. So all your researchers would already have a profile, and in that profile, they can include the peer review work that they have done for various journals. At this stage, if you are not part of this recognition service, this process is disjointed. It's not connected. So that means if they review for your journal, you give them a thank you email, they will then have to take the thank you email and put it manually into their profile in the Web of Science. But if you are partnering with us as a for the reviewer recognition service, then this is connected. Meaning, if they have a profile, they will automatically be updated in their profile. So that means in your system, you can just say, add this review to my Web of Science researcher profile, yes or no. If they say yes, then this login page will appear. They sign into their profile page, and subsequent reviews will be automatically added into their profile once they have completed for your journal. Okay, so for the benefit of peer reviewers, this is a convenience that you're providing for them. Convenience to be recognized as a reviewer. At the same time, for your journal's name will appear in their profile. So your journal's name will appear under their verified peer review section, and it becomes like a free marketing for your journal. So when other researchers see this researcher's profile and they see his peer review work, your journal's name will appear there in front of them. And you will also get a partner dashboard. So that means for you as a journal, you will have some analytics that you can do. You're able to answer these questions. Number one, my rejected manuscript. So I'm sure some of you might have rejected some papers before, right? Have you ever wondered where those papers are published or whether they are even published some in other journals? Yes, maybe. So on the partner dashboard that we have, you're able to immediately see the rejected manuscript, the manuscript you rejected. If it was published somewhere else, you are able to also see the citation counts of those journals. If the citation counts is large, that means what? You might have missed out on a very good paper because you rejected that paper. It got published somewhere else, right? So that is one perspective, one analysis that you can see. But more importantly, you're also able to see how happy your reviewers are. We will periodically survey your reviewers. They will give you a score, and you can see whether they are happy or not. You're also able to see where they are from, and which other journals share the same reviewers as you. So when it comes to where you're from, this is the kind of information you will see. Which countries are most of your reviewers for, and which are the top 10 countries and top 10 institutions that are reviewing for your journal. You're also able to see the score of your satisfaction of your reviewers. And this is where the manuscripts are going. So you might not be able to see this, but this is the manuscript name. So perhaps you have rejected this article. It has gone on to be published in this other journal. And good thing is that it currently has 0 citations. So you're not missing out that much. It's not impactful. It's not a paper that has given a lot of impact yet. So this is the kind of information that you can see for rejected manuscripts. All right, so I've shown you quite a lot of tools, but ultimately what gaps are addressed with these tools are summarized here on this table. So if you want to manage your manuscript workflow, You want to make sure that you are publishing in a timely manner. Scholar One manuscripts is the system. If you want to find peer reviewers, you want to find more peer reviewers, Web of Science Reviewer Locator is the service that you want to look at. If you want to make sure that they're happy, then review recognition will be the service. Okay, so currently we do have a few journals within Indonesia that is already using this service of reviewer locator and recognition service. So if you're curious, we can let you know later on as well. So that's how you can address some of the quality criteria. The other aspect is that, remember the attributes that I shared. You need to have good content. You need to have good network of authors and readers. It's also about marketing. Okay, if you keep your journal in the frame of Indonesia only, then it will always be Indonesia readers that are looking at your journal. You need to be able to promote your journal to the international research community. And it is something that a lot of journals are already doing. If you are an author yourself, you would have received some of these emails that you see on the screen that are call for papers. So you as a journal, you are also able to take on this service so that you can promote your journal to Web of Science authors. So what this service solves, okay, which is the Web of Science Author Connect service, is it will help you to attract more influential authors. So this marketing service that you can work with us on allows you to define that which authors you want to target. So for example, I only want to target authors that have published in Q1 journals in Web of Science in a specific subject area. You can do that. Or I want to only find those authors that are in the top 10% in terms of citation. That is also possible. Or I only want to find authors that publish in these journals. That is also possible. So you can define your target audience for this campaign, yeah, with us. You are also able to call for papers more easily, okay, because of the, if you want to be indexed in Web of Science, ultimately, you are going to be read by the Web of Science readers. So this service allows you to target those Web of Science readers. If you want to promote your journal to these readers, you can. If you want to promote your journal to attract more authors to submit, you can also do that. If you have a conference, if you have a symposium, a special issue, you can also use this to promote this to Web of Science readers. There are many, many different ways that you can use our email campaign service. If you're a new journal, these are just some of them. Call for papers is the most popular one. You have your those that are established journals. You might want to share about your current issues. So if you have 3 issues a year, you can actually showcase each issue using one campaign, for example. Then who are you targeting? I've already mentioned is the Web of Science Authors database. You can target specific market segments in countries as well. So just think of us as an outsourced marketing service. You'll also be given a report after the email has been shared so that you know where the traffic is going and whether it is effective. And this is how the report will look like. We will share the open rates, click-through rates, which domain is opening your email. So for example, if you had targeted Harvard University, did Harvard University email addresses open your email? Those are things that you can see in this report. This is one sample of a campaign that we did with Universal Medicina in Indonesia. So they sent out about 5,000 emails, and the target authors were in Q2, Q3 journals in general and internal medicine category in Web of Science. The subject areas are focused around public health, occupational health, etc. And the countries that they were looking at were those listed here on the screen. So at the end of this campaign, what happened was that for this journal, Universal Medicina, they saw an increase in the readership by 20%. They also saw contributions from countries that they have never received contributions from. And these are like China, Korea, Taiwan, India. Those are some of the countries that they have never received articles from, and they subsequently received. Yeah. This is another one that we did for UN-Air, one of their journals. They are still our customer. They're still running these campaigns. This is 10,000 emails for one campaign for the JAKI. Again, they also targeted the Q2, Q3 journals, authors from Q2, Q3 journals, and specific subject areas and countries. This is something that was done many years ago. So the Crop Journal managed to increase their full text downloads by 50%. And also the citation frequencies improved by more than 30%. So that is the email campaign. If some of you are from your own institutions, you might also want to think about it as a campaign, an email service that can be shared across the other departments within your institutions as well. So the campaigns can also be used to improve reputation of your institution, recruit talents, and many others. So you're able to promote some of the programs that you have in your university, for example, like fellowship programs, and attract more international lecturers, for example. And that's it. So I've shared with you about the use of Scholar One, the Web of Science Reviewer Locator, the Web of Science Reviewer Recognition Service, and now the marketing service. If you're keen to find out more about any of these improvement tools that you can work with us on, feel free to reach out to myself or even DuSync, and we can work something out. But now I see that we have maybe about 10 minutes. Feel free to ask me any questions that you have with regards to the selection criteria or even the services that we have shared with you in the journal improvement segment. Any questions?
Ya, Bapak Ibu, apakah ada pertanyaan terkait ini tadi section tentang selection criteria dari Ibu Julin? Silakan Bapak Ibu jika masih ada pertanyaan.
I think there was one important question that was raised in the chat, which is, do we have to change our Scholar One manuscript to Scholar One manuscript? And Dr. C as you mentioned, you don't have to. So yes, you don't have to change to Scholar One, but definitely Scholar One is a good choice because it is recognized by already a lot of impactful authors globally.
Yeah, it actually helps as well for people to kind of recognize your submission system. When authors are comfortable with the system that they are using, it reflects very well on the perception of your journal. So that there is absolutely nothing wrong with OJS. It works well, but of course we all know there are some problems with it as well. It tends to break. The upgrading is a very painful exercise. So we know and we are aware of all these problems. But if you can maintain it well, it's a perfectly good system, nothing wrong. What we have seen, and Bu Julin has also given some examples, that when journals invest in a solution like Scholar One, they tend to see much better manuscripts coming in. They tend to see better responses from reviewers, etc. So that's something that you might want to think about if you want to upgrade your journal infrastructure.
No questions? No questions, then I will share our contact details here. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Diu Sing. We'll be happy to help you. And I think I pass it back to Diu Sing or Bu Amelia. Diu Sing, any other last words that you want to add to close off?
Maybe I will just say a few things. That there are a couple of journals in Indonesia last year that actually came to us and said that they need some help in locating reviewers and recognizing the reviewers. So a couple of universities. So this is another thing that the journals on the call today can think about. If you are not ready to change your entire submission system, having that reviewer component as a start is also has proven to be quite popular in Indonesia recently. So do think about that. You have my contact details, and I think with that, I have nothing more to add. So maybe thank you, Bu Cecilia, for giving Bu Amelia for giving us the opportunity to speak to your Journal Alliance. And perhaps, Bu Amelia, if there's anything else you want to mention, please feel free to go ahead. For me and Bu Julin, we don't have anything else.
Thank you, Mr. C, Julian, for the insight and for the selection criteria information. That's quite much. I think all the team now should start to make a strategy to get index as Web of Science. And okay, Bu Arika Mayanti, any statement?
Yeah, I think we have such an insightful session today, and the PowerPoint presentation, if it is allowed to be shared, we would share it. And of course, we thank you both, Mr. C and Mr. Lin, for having us today in this discussion, and hopefully some of us will get index in WOS. Hopefully.
Yeah, we can visit Malang one of these days. We do go to Universitas Brawijaya a couple of times, or at least for myself, I have been there a number of times. Yeah, we are happy if the need arises. Definitely happy to see you in person in Malang.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I see you are wearing batik, so I think that's also an expression.
That is correct. See, yeah, that's batik.
Thank you.
And Julin is also putting on her
yes. That's parang motif. Thank you so much for having us today. Thank you.
You're
thank
welcome.
You so much. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu atas kedatangannya pada seminar hari ini. Thank you for coming to our seminar. We will see you again in the near future maybe, and stay in touch with us, ALJEBI, with Web of Science, Mr. C, I think, Mrs. Juin. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.